welcome to this week's Omni Edition. I'm Dan York.
And I'm Julie Hughes. This week on Omni Edition, we'll take a look at the JCs, and then after the break, join us for an interview with Ron Cowden and Mike Wilmot of the school system. But first, let's take a look at the news. Dan?
Council finally voted on a plan to help take care of the traffic situation at Garden City High School at a special council meeting that was held before the regular workshop Tuesday night. A 10-point plan was presented that had been drawn up by the city manager, Cam Caldwell, the school system, and some of the neighbors in the area of Cambridge near the high school. Originally, the plan was to just open up Central Avenue south of Cambridge into the high school parking lot. But that plan by itself met strong opposition from a large group of neighbors that attended last Monday's city council meeting. During the past week, school officials, city officials, and residents met to come up with a compromise plan. That plan calls for the widening of the service drive that runs behind the high school to Maplewood, opening up of a stretch of road between Cambridge and the parking lot, which was the original plan, installation of a four-way stop at the corner of Cambridge and Central, petitioning of the county to remove the light located at Cambridge and Middle Belt, and the addition of a light on the corner of Windsor and Middle Belt, one of the exits to the high school parking lot. Expansion of the Cambridge parking lot at the junior high school, placing of left turn only signs in the parking lot of Schoolcraft College as to direct traffic towards Middle Belt. Work with Cambridge residents to develop off-street parking between the hours of 8 and 5 and to increase police enforcement in the area within limits. Also, they want to develop a board of review to review the situation on a monthly basis. Some residents of the area suggested that Central between Cambridge and the parking lot only be opened as a last resort. Council, though, decided to pass the resolution as was. All council members present voted in favor of the 10-point plan. It was decided that any road work begun should finish at the same time in the case of the service drive and Central Avenue. Unable to have any lights moved, the city must first go in front of the County Road Commission, which could be a rather lengthy process. Julie?
A representative was on hand at Tuesday's council workshop from Wade Trim and Associates Engineering to help explain to council Garden City's role in the proposed merger of the North Huron Valley Wastewater Control System with the Rouge Valley Wastewater Control System. The reason for the proposal is the benefit of becoming a #1 priority in the involvement for improvement in the eyes of the state by being a part of the North Huron Valley. By itself, the Rouge Valley is a very low priority. The reason for the need to become a higher priority is the fact that in October of 1984, projects which need federal funding will receive only 55% compared to the 75% they will get if started before the October deadline. The Rouge Valley has been told by the EPA and the DNR that work is needed in improving the current system. By merging with the Lower Huron Valley, the work can be accomplished at a much lower rate. Under the proposed plan, Garden City will end up paying $70,000 as their share of the total cost of a $31 million project. Final definition of the project and execution of service agreements must be submitted by January 1st. A public hearing will be held on the issue in March. Old St. Nick made his debut here in Garden City last Thursday when the 1983 J.C. Santaland Parade traveled through the streets of Garden City. About 5,000 people greeted Santa as they waited at Santaland and in the streets. 41 entries made up this year's parade. During this holiday season, Santaland will be open to the public on the following dates: December 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, and the 16th through the 23rd. The complex will be open from 6 to 10 p.m. each of those nights. Youngsters will also be able to have their pictures taken with Santa at the Santaland complex. The complex will also be open on other days for special trips by particular groups. Dan?
Just when you thought the issue of the Playboy Channel was dead, another resolution has been passed asking McLean Hunter to be more selective in its programming. This resolution was passed by the Garden City School Board at Monday's meeting, but in this case, the vote wasn't unanimous. School Board members Armin Barsamian and Rick Schmidt both voted against the resolution introduced by Tim Sutton. Both were of the opinion that it wasn't the place of the school board to act on city business. Barsamian called the resolution redundant and beyond the duties of the district, while Schmidt said the board was opening doors they should not approach. The resolution itself says that the school board respects the rights of residents to select or choose entertainment forms according to their wishes and desires, but the programs should reflect a high standard of viewing. Don Mullet and Reuben Queen, who both spoke against the channel at the last council meeting, were also on hand to make their views known again. The resolution passed with only Schmidt and Barsamian voting no. For the first time in 6 years, the Garden City Public Schools will be buying new school buses. School Board Monday approved a plan to purchase 4 new buses to be delivered before Christmas. The GMC buses will cost the school system about $144,000 to be paid over a period of 7 years. The state allows schools to amortize buses for that period of 7 years. Julie?
Garden City Councilperson Jean Salvatore is in Cleveland this week, recovering from a heart bypass surgery that was done Tuesday morning. Salvatore is expected to be out of the area for about a week more. We at Omni wish the best of luck to Jean Salvatore in a speedy recovery. Daryl DeLavio, Director of Administrative Services for the City of Garden City, has been reappointed to the Transportation and Public Works Committee of the Michigan Municipal League. This will be Daryl's 3rd term on the committee. The committee has the responsibility of furnishing continuing service to the Board of Trustees on pending legislation and for making recommendations on new or revised policies for submission to the membership. Dan?
After 17 years with the city, Emily Palmer will be retiring as the police department secretary tomorrow, being Thursday. Emily had been the secretary of the police department since 1967. When Emily started with the department, she was the first female employee. Emily has served under 2 police chiefs. She has 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. And the Leather Bottle will be putting on their 12th annual Wild Game Dinner Monday, December 5th at the Leather Bottle on Warren Road between Middlebelt and Inkster. Proceeds from the dinner go to both the Garden City Youth Athletic Association and the Reading is Fundamental program. Tickets for the dinner are $4.75 for adults and $2.75 for children. Tickets are available at City Hall and the ice rink or by calling Herman Bersano at 421-8009. That's 421-8009. All the people working at the restaurant that night will be volunteering their time. Julie?
Garden City Junior High School sponsor a weightlifting and physical fitness demonstration tonight at 7:30 in the weight room under the dome. Both male and female weightlifting champions will be in attendance, including a former Mr. America. The demonstration is open to the public at no charge. The Garden City Fine Arts Council will be sponsoring an exhibit of area artwork at the Maplewood Community Center on December 1st through the 3rd from 10 a.m. till 9 p.m. each day. There is no admission charge. Dan?
Taking a look at sports. Even though the 1983 high school football championships were just wrapped up last Saturday, it's already time for the boys' basketball season to gear up. One of the favorites in the Northwest Suburban League this year is Garden City's Cougars. Returning to Garden City's lineup this year will be last year's leading scorer, Scott McCloskey. McCloskey averaged 18.3 points a game last year with 10 rebounds. 6'5" forward, was a member of the Northwest Suburban League All-Star team last year. Also returning as center, David Hayden, the 6'7" center senior didn't see much action last year and was injured in a practice Monday, and so his status for the season is unknown. Moving up from the JV will be Jeff Schroet, that'll be Dave Wegson moving up from JV, and Jeff Schroet will come off the bench to aid the front line. At guard, Garden City will look to returning senior Paul Kroll, Steve Fryer, and Steve Klein. The Cougars open up on the road this Friday night when they travel to Cherry Hill to take on the Spartans in a non-conference game. Next week, we'll have an interview with Coach Bob Drop to get his evaluation of this year's squad. Julie?
That'll wrap up the news section of our program. Next, join us for a look at the Garden City JCs, and after the break, we'll take a look at Mike Wilmot and Ron Cowden of the school system. Hairstyles for Omni Edition Garden City, courtesy of Susan Perwerton of Heidi's of Fairlane.
The Garden City JCs have a rich and impressive history. The same is true here in Garden City, where the JCs have become an integral part of the community. Officially named the JCs in 1965, the group began its establishment in the early 1900s. In Garden City, the JCs have existed since 1954. The purpose of the JCs is leadership through community involvement. Their dealings with the community have helped the JCs become known as one of the most important groups here in Garden City. One of the most visible projects sponsored by the JCs is Santaland and the Santaland Parade. Every year without fail, the JCs have made sure that Garden City had one of the most successful Christmas parades in the state. They have also kept the Santaland complex open, much to the joy of thousands of area youngsters each year. Hundreds of hours are put into that annual project. Another visible project sponsored by the JCs includes the Junior Miss program. The JCs invest a considerable amount of money into that program, with the majority of it going into scholarships. Other JC projects involve festivals at City Park, the 4th of July fireworks, Cougar and Bulldog of the Week awards, and the JC Haunted House. The JCs have an age restriction of between 18 and 35. The reason behind that limitation is to force change and make sure that all JC members become involved in the leadership process. In that same scheme of thought, the JCs can only hold an office for 2 years, thus guaranteeing the involvement of everyone. The JCs also have an organization for women. The age limits are the same, and the two groups often interact on the same projects. The JCs are always looking for ideas and new people. Their meetings are held on the first Thursday of each month at the Silver Lanes Dining Room. The Garden City JCs, a group our town can be proud of.
Introducing the Disney Channel. Premium programming for the whole family, 16 hours a day. You'll watch features from Epcot Center, movies from the Disney Library, and specials for the kids. There are specially created movies, too, like 5 Mile Creek and Tiger Town with Roy Scheider and Justin Henry. And as a Disney Channel subscriber, you'll receive the monthly Disney Channel magazine absolutely free. But the best news is you can choose the Disney Channel as part of our new Premier package and save money. With Premier, you'll get Disney, plus over 40 basic services, your choice of any 2 of our existing premium movie services, like HBO and Showtime, and more. Call us today for more information on the best entertainment deal around.
Hi, and welcome back to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York. With us this afternoon on Omni Edition, I have the superintendent of the Garden City Public Schools, Mr. Michael Wilmot, and the principal of Garden City High School, Ron Cowden. Nice to have you both with me today,
Thank you,
gentlemen. Both of you are new to the Garden City, or at least new to your positions. You've been with the school system for a while, Mr. Wilmot, and Mr. Cowden, you are new to the system. Briefly, if you can, some background about yourself, Mr. Wilmot.
Well, Dan, my experience with the Garden City Public Schools goes back to 1974. And at that time, I came to the district from Livonia. My first administrative assignment was that of the assistant principal at West High School. From there, I went to the old East High School as an assistant principal, spent 3 years there, left the district and went to the Southgate Community Schools as a high school principal, came back to Garden City in 1980 as a high school principal, moved to the business office and then to the superintendency. So
Pretty destined to be in the school system.
Moved around a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Cowden, your background in education.
Okay, I began with the Livonia system also, Dan. Began in elementary position. I was an elementary principal, Perrinville area, which is the south end of Livonia. I was also a student activities director at Bentley High School, assistant principal at Churchill High School, assistant superintendent in Livonia, and then while I was working on my doctorate at Michigan, had an opportunity to apply for a position in Manistee, and have been in Manistee prior to this year for the past 5 years.
Okay. Mr. Wilmot, since you took over for Mike Washburn this summer, have there been many changes you've made, or have you been going along the same direction that Mike Washburn had been in?
Well, Dan, I think there have been a lot of changes made, but I think if you look at the district and how our district has grown and developed over about the last 10 years, it makes a little bit more sense. So I think I would like to just trace you through some of those steps.
Sure.
If you remember, back in '74, the year that I first came to the district, we experienced some rather significant labor difficulties. I like to think that my arriving on the scene didn't have a whole lot to do with those difficulties, but rather that they occurred at the same time. After a period of 3 or 4 years of some rather difficult times, the district, under the leadership of Mike Washburn, really began to grow again. People took a new interest in the Garden City Public Schools. The community came forward and provided the additional financial support we needed to improve our program. And over the last 4 to 5 school years, we have made some fairly significant advances in our program and in the district in general. The point that that the district was at in June when I took over the superintendency was one where we had become a good school district, but there was still a lot of work that needed to be accomplished and a lot of things that we still needed to do. So many of the changes that we have already implemented and some of the changes that we have planned to take place over the next couple years relate to taking that next step to make Garden City an excellent school district, one where we are confident that our students will receive as good of education as they could anywhere in the state of Michigan. Some of those changes included reassignment of about 25% of our administrative staff. The intent was to try to make better use, or the best use, of the talents and skills that each of our administrators possess. We have made some changes in some building locations again. As you may know, we run the country's largest center for children stricken with autism. Prior to this year, we housed that program in two separate buildings, the Marquette Elementary Building in Vogel. We have moved that entire program into the Berger Center. We have continued to expand our adult and community ed program. Last year, we had about 3,500 people participating in that program. We've expanded it this year where we have well over 5,000 people participating in adult and community ed programs.
Those aren't all Garden City residents?
No, that program has grown so that it includes people from 7 different adjoining districts. And I think that's a clear indication as to how the quality of Garden City Public Schools is perceived by surrounding districts where people are asking to participate in our programs. In addition to those surface kinds of changes, we have also begun to take another good hard look at our curriculum and our program, things that are happening in the classroom, and are trying to put into place some revisions and some developments that will ensure that when a teacher goes into a classroom with a group of students, that the students will leave with an excellent education, and that involves looking at the whole instructional process.
How about you, Mr. Cowden? You've made some rather well-publicized policy changes at the high school in a relatively short time.
Well, Dan, I think that goes back to originally when I interviewed for the position, some of the concerns that were raised by parents and members of the community in terms of the closed campus situation, smoking situations, things of that nature. Also, I had an opportunity, excellent opportunity for a new principal when I first came to Garden City that they have a student leadership conference each year with the students from the junior high and high school where they meet at Walden Woods with the administrators, and they have a chance to express their concerns and what they can do to help make their school something that they can be proud of. Via those two communication processes to me, I did then sit down and bring about 3 major changes in the high school this year. The campus is closed with the exception of lunch hour. The smoking policies have been narrowed to one specific area, and for this year, the juniors and seniors only are allowed to smoke in that area. Next year, it will be seniors only in that area.
Is there eventually a plan to eliminate it completely?
No, I think, you know, that the state law currently says that 18-year-olds can smoke, and I think reality says to me that we will always have a smoking area there. Okay. We have had people from Livonia, if plagiarism is a form of flattery, they have come out to view our smoking area and attempt to adopt similar policies, and it has worked very well this year for us.
What have been your initial impressions after coming down from Manistee of the Garden City schools and Garden City High School in particular?
I am most impressed. The things that jump immediately to mind, the amount of parent involvement, obvious caring on the part of boosters, PTA members, willing to really give lots of extra time for their kids. Also the fact that my original image was that perhaps Garden City didn't have a lot of school spirit, and that I completely turned that around. Our kids are very enthusiastic about a variety of things. Had an outstanding homecoming week. I think they are very proud of their school, and I'm proud to be their principal.
Mr. Wilmot, with the primary schools, just as changes have occurred in the secondary schools through the high school, what have been some of the changes that have occurred in the primary schools over the past year or even since your tenure began?
Well, Dan, again, the changes that are occurring at the elementary level really are changes that will be slowly recognized by members of the community. We are encouraging our professional staff at the elementary school to reevaluate our total curriculum. What we're concerned about is making sure that skills that are being taught at the third grade level are building upon skills that were taught at the second grade level, and that they are preparing students for the work that they do at the fourth grade level. We're also very concerned about a number of the national reports that have come out recently about the quality of education in America. And we are taking another look at our requirements and the kinds of things that we are exposing our students to. We want to ensure that our kids are getting enough instruction in the areas of math and science, for example. And probably one of the more publicized things that we have attempted to do is to bring the computer as a learning tool into the classroom. Each of our elementaries have a number of microcomputers in their building, and it would be our plan to continue to expand that number so that every student has a basic experience with computers by the time they leave the elementary school.
That's got to be an unavoidable thing now in schools.
Well, I think it's part of reality that people in the future will have to deal with computers in their daily life. And the earlier we can begin to expose students to that, the better off they're going to be.
What kind of response is there as far as to work on the computers? And this could be directed to both of you because there are computer classes now in the high school. Is it a positive response? Are the kids intimidated by the computers, or are they really happy to see it?
We really could offer many, many more hours. We currently are going 0 hour through 7th hour. The kids stay in there on their lunch hour on their own time, and literally the instructor has to lock the door because they will come back after lunch or after school to try and get at the computers. Obviously there's some financial rationale so that we can't have all the computer classes that we would like to have. We are looking at next year and using the community ed resources in terms of the computers they have there during the hours of the day that they are not using them. But the kids are, like they are every place, just very fascinated and want to get on those computers every chance they can.
Another question for both of you. Educational systems in Garden City, in Michigan, anywhere in the country. What would you like to see changed? And just about every change you would like to see rely on money. Is it, do they go hand in hand? Is it that you cannot make a change, not make a positive change, without the money there to back it up?
I'm not sure that that's necessarily a given, Dan, that there needs to be more money to make things better. If you look at a lot of the research that's been done with organizations and in industry, and you look at real success stories, a key ingredient tends to be attitude. And a majority of the research that I have looked at seem to indicate that if you really want excellence, you have to have an attitude of excellence. You have to have high expectations, you have to have people who are willing to pay attention to detail, and you have to have people who are willing to listen. And I don't think any of those things necessarily cost any money. They're all things that we can do a better job than what we've done in the past, and it would be our goal to try to do those things in the future.
What kind of attitude did you find when you came into the high school, Mr. Cowden, with faculty? Was there a positive attitude, or was it deteriorated?
Well, there was a positive attitude. I think on any faculty there you are going to have your more gung-ho teachers, so to speak, and your average teachers and your teachers that have maybe been at it a little while and need some new challenges. Okay. I think it's an excellent staff. I do live in the Garden City area. I kind of judge every teacher along the lines would I like my son or daughter to be in that classroom. I think it's the type of staff that I'd be most pleased to have my son or daughter be in those classrooms. Obviously there are some problems day in and day out when you're working with people and students and the large numbers that we are that do develop, but it's enthusiastic staff.
This may not be an appropriate question, but from both of your experiences, do you find that a younger staff will be more enthusiastic, or is that not the case?
I don't think that tends to be the case, Dan. Okay. I think it's a lot like old age. I like to think of it as a frame of mind rather than a state in life.
Okay.
you find many experienced teachers who still have that same zest for teaching that they did the first day they walked into a classroom. In other instances, you encounter people who have been there for a relatively short period of time, but for all practical purposes have lost their desire. I think we're very fortunate. I think a vast majority of our people are really committed to teaching as a profession and really glad to be where they are.
I think another positive thing along those lines is that the parents in Garden City are very supportive. I mentioned that earlier. I've had an opportunity to be in a number of school systems, a number of positions. Lots of times people, they want discipline. You know, the #1 Gallup poll concerned with education every year is there's not enough discipline in the schools. But oftentimes they all want discipline until it's their youngster. I really have not found that a problem. The Garden City parents have been very supportive of the changes that we have brought about, and I'm very impressed with that.
Don't you find that even the kids are looking for the discipline also,
yes.
at least for direction, if nothing else?
It gets back to Mr. Wilmot's expectations. I think if you expect the best, you are more than likely going to get it.
A quick comparison between Manistee and Garden City. You've got a suburban school in a rather largely populated area to Manistee, which is not such a populated area. Is there a difference because of that or not, or what the kids are exposed to?
I think there's, well, it's a tough comparison to make. There's more opportunity for variety of curriculum at Garden City High School. Manistee would be simply a basics type of approach because of the smaller school, less numbers of staff. It's an excellent school system also.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, the difference would be in the perception of the town. I think most of the people in a small town, the teachers live in the town, go to church in the town, they see each other continually. The families are together continually. So there's that aspect. There's a lot to be said for the aspect of the Garden City being more of the real world type situation.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for giving up your time to
Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you, Dan.
be here this afternoon. I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody else for being here on Omni Edition Garden City this Wednesday. If you have anything you'd like to see on Omni Edition or any suggestions, please feel free to address them to Omni Edition at care of McLean Hunter in Garden City. So again, we hope to see you again next week on Omni Edition Garden City. Good night. Hey, hang on a second. Hang on before you run off. There's another plate. Good evening and welcome to this week's Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York.
And I'm Julie Hughes. This week on Omni Edition Garden City, you'll join us for a look at the Helping Hands program of Garden City and the Garden City Fire Department. But first, let's take a look at the news. Dan?
Helen Minder, owner of Dash Discount in Garden City and longtime Garden City resident, has been issued another violation for selling liquor from her party store. In the instances before, Minder had been cited for selling to minors. In this case, though, she was caught selling liquor without a license at all. Back on November 10th, Minder had her SDD and SDM licenses put in escrow by the Liquor Control Commission. After going to court, Minder was given until the first of the year to sell the licenses to a party acceptable by the LCC. In the interim, though, Minder did not have the legal right to sell beer, wine, or liquor. Minder was given the choice of either turning the license in voluntarily or selling it, and she chose not to give it up voluntarily. So far, there is no word from the LCC in regards to Minder's latest violation. Julie?
Since 1981, Mrs. Minder has received 13 violations from the LCC, including her last. Her late husband, Mr. Minder, owned Minder's drugs from as long as anyone can remember until 1981. After the death of her husband, Mrs. Minder sold that store to Tony Andrews, but continued to own the building. This summer, Tony Andrews moved down the block to the old Beckwith Evans building. After Minder sold the original store, she opened what was called Dash Discount. At first, she was in the Garden Plaza, but now she's next to Kmart in a separate building. Mrs. Minder received her first violation for selling to minors back in June of 1981. In the fall of the same year, Minder was given 90 days to sell the license. She's been obtaining extensions on that order ever since. In each case, Minder has been served with a citation from the city. From one point of June 1982 to June of 1983, Minder was on probation from Judge Richard Hammer. During that period, Minder did not receive a single violation. Road work, at least for now, is mostly complete on both Central Avenue between the high school parking lot and Cambridge on the strip of road between the parking lot and the service drive behind the high school. The two roads have been plowed and graveled and should be ready to be opened within about a week. As you may remember, those two actions are part of a 10-point plan that was settled on at a special council meeting a week ago to help alleviate the safety problem that exists when trying to exit the school's parking lot. The road leading to Cambridge is a temporary road. A board has been established, however, to monitor the situation. And one decision they make is whether or not that road will be made permanent. Dan?
Most recent reports on Council member Gene Salvatore have been good after having quadruple bypass surgery in Cleveland on Wednesday. This was the past Wednesday. However, doctors did discover some damage to the two upper aortas, done apparently by previous heart attacks. But the lower two aortas seem to be in excellent condition. In other council news, Vince Fordell and Don McNulty were reappointed to the Employee Retirement System Board of Trustees. Jim Plakus was appointed as an alternate delegate to the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, while Kim Allen Miller, Jess Radford, David Powerski, Margaret McDonald, and Bruce Levick were all appointed to the Garden City Board of Review, and all this activity took place at Monday's council meeting. And just to note that the regular council meeting that is scheduled for Monday, January 2nd, has been rescheduled for Tuesday, January 3rd, because of the New Year's holiday. Julie?
Some of you will be glad to hear, and then again, some of you might not, that Garden City Omni Edition has been renewed for 6 months. That period will take effect when the original trial run of the show runs out on December 14th. The program, which is subsidized by the City of Garden City via the Cable Commission, was approved at Monday night's council meeting by council. We would still appreciate your input into this program because it is designed to be a community format. As any news items that you may have or any ideas that you may have on features can be sent to Omni Edition Garden City, care of McLean Hunter, Pardo, Garden City. In Garden City High School Marching Band, under the direction of Jim Chain, will be putting on a Christmas band show Thursday night, December 8th at O'Leary Auditorium, beginning at 7:30 p.m. The band asks you, though, that you bring a canned good to that performance in exchange for an admission fee. Next week at the high school, the school will feature Christmas Kaleidoscope. The program will feature both the Garden City Singers and a variety show. The performance starts at 7:30, also at O'Leary Auditorium. Admission is $1 for that show. Dan?
December 17th was publicly declared Underprivileged Children Day at Monday night City Council meeting in an effort to reach out to the numbers of underprivileged, retarded, and forgotten children in our community. Chuck Cook, who was commended for his actions of the Mayor's Committee for Underprivileged Children, at that same meeting presented Berger School yesterday with ski equipment that was bought through the Mayor's Committee. Also having to do with underprivileged children, the Kiwanis and the Rotary Clubs will be sponsoring their annual Christmas parties for underprivileged children at the Garden City Presbyterian Church on Wednesday, December 14th. The kids will be presented with gifts and will be treated to a visit by Santa Claus. The choral group from the Garden City High School will also be on hand. The Salvation Army has been doing their traditional collecting for the holiday season since November in front of Kmart here in Garden City. The Salvation Army will be located there until December 23rd. The Kiwanis will be helping in this effort on December 17th. These two girls were doing their part just in front of Kmart just before the snow hit yesterday here in Garden City.
On Tuesday, On Tuesday, December 20th, Maplewood Center will again present a dessert theater. The Family Dessert Theater will present the Hungarian-born folk singing group, Gemini. 2 shows will be put on during that day at the center. A 2:30 show is geared towards senior citizens, while a 7 o'clock show will be for families with children. The $2 admission price includes dessert and a beverage. Tickets are on sale at the Maplewood Community Center. The show will be held in the Maplewood Center multi-purpose room. Dan?
Last night, the Garden City Cougars dropped their first game of the season rather soundly, 68-46 to Livonia Stevenson Spartans on the road. Tom DeMaco led both teams with 20 points. DeMaco had 16 of those points in the first half, which was equal to all of Garden City's scoring. Steve Klein led the Cougars with 13. Scott McCluskey only had 6 points on the evening. Last Friday, Garden City won their opener easily with a 71-46 thrashing of Cherry Hill on the road. McCluskey led the Cougars in that one with 20 points. This Friday, the Cougars play their first league game and first home game of the season when they take on North Farmington. Coach Bob Drop commented about the Garden City's lack of experience.
It's going to be a little green when we start off, and of course we'll have 2 games under our belt before we get to our first league game, and hopefully we'll get some experience with some of these people that haven't played. But you're right, we only have one real bona fide starter, and he's a good one, Scott McCluskey, all league, all observer.
Okay, but you're in the same situation that a lot of teams in your league are.
Well, every year, every team every year has to look upon new people to fill vacancies that were set up because of graduation. So we're not going to be any different than anybody else, and you just have to work with it. We played this summer. We played about 17 games this summer. We had practices in the fall. So, other than just game experience, when it counts with the crowd, we'll just have to build up to it.
And that'll wrap up the news section of our program for this week. Next, join us for a look at the Helping Hands program of Garden City, and then after the break, we'll take a look at the Garden City Fire Department.
Lending a hand. That's basically what Helping Hands is all about. The Helping Hand program of Garden City incorporates high school youth as both role models and friends with younger Garden City youths. The idea of the program was first conceived in January of 1983 by former Superintendent of Schools Michael Washburn and current City Manager Cam Caldwell as part of an 11-point plan to assist the youth of Garden City. Back in August, the program began operating on a pilot basis, with 4 local elementary students interacting with local high school students. The Helping Hand program was designed to give Garden City youngsters the opportunity to establish an ongoing personal relationship with high school students who are interested in their growth and development. The youngsters aren't the only ones to benefit, however. Besides meeting new and interesting people, many of whom share the same interests as themselves, the Helping Hand program gives high school students the opportunity to reach out and touch the lives of kids that are right now facing many of the same decisions and dilemmas that they themselves faced while growing up. They also receive the opportunity to do something positive for those around them and the community in which they live. Parents also get the benefit of knowing that their children are spending time with someone that they can trust. And as those with Helping Hands are finding out, many times a very special bond may develop between the high school students and the parents. A bond that develops because they share the interest in the growth and development of a very special child. The parents also get to see their child through the eyes of someone who may receive possibly a totally different perspective, helping to bridge the generation gap that may sometimes exist between a parent and child. Clearly, the Helping Hand program is a learning experience for all. This project in no way attempts to serve as a substitute parent, nor as a babysitting service, but rather as a tool that both parent and child may use to better understand themselves and each other. Youth helping youth. One more example of the commitment that Garden City residents have made to each other and their community. If you feel that you or someone you know could possibly benefit from this program, or if you'd just like more information, write to Helping Hands, care of Julie Hughes or Larry Nelson, Garden City City Hall, 6000 Middlebelt Road, or call 421-6430 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Is this your garage? Or worse yet, could this be your garage? In fact, in over 80% of cases like this, the garage is not locked. With odds like that, there's not much the police can do to keep your garage from being ripped. Why don't you help us fight crime?
Hello and welcome back to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York. On this portion of Omni Edition, we're going to look at the Garden City Fire Department. And with me this morning from the Garden City Fire Department is Chief Keith Nims and Captain Mike Frost. I want to welcome you both to Omni Edition. And Chief, to start things off, how about a little bit of background about yourself in the fire department?
I started in the Garden City Fire Department in 1964, shortly after the department was formed. I worked my way up from the ranks through the officers in fire suppression into fire prevention, and recently, a year ago, April, promoted to fire chief.
How about you, Captain Frost?
I've been on the fire department in Garden City since 1965 of August. I started out as a firefighter and worked up through sergeant, lieutenant, and to captain. And I'm currently the shift commander in charge of the third shift. And our shift is in charge of the public fire and safety education for the community.
Okay. One of the topics of interest for the fire department lately has been the EMS training that some of your men are going through. I wonder if you maybe give us an explanation of that.
That's correct. That's the primary concern of ours right now, is getting our people through the training and successfully completing it so that we can hopefully implement limited advanced life support for Garden City, or in Garden City, early part of 1984. This training that the men are going through right now is quite extensive, time-consuming, and it's quite difficult. So Captain Frost is one of the gentlemen attending this school, and I'm sure that he can verify how tough the training is that they are receiving. But like I say, it is a primary concern of ours right now to get the men through this training so that we can attain the goal that we've stated we'd like to reach in the early part of '84 of implementing this service in Garden City.
What will make this service coming up different than the service you're able to offer now with EMS?
Mike, you want to touch on that?
Well, right now, all of the EMTs on the rescue squad are basic EMTs. And by going to a limited advanced life support system, we'll be able to intubate the patient if he's not breathing, and we'll also be able to start IV fluids, which is very important in maintaining the body and maintaining the fluids in the body.
Sure. Again, about the training, the chief said that you are going through the training and taking a lot of hours?
Yeah, there's quite a few hours. We have over 40 clinical hours. That's time that we have to spend in the hospital, working under the supervision of the doctors and the nurses, and we're doing that clinical training at Garden City Osteopathic Hospital. Mm-hmm. And we're doing it in the operating room, in the emergency room, and with the IV therapy teams.
So it'll just overall make the EMS service here in Garden City that much better?
Certainly will be, sure.
A little off guard, how would you compare that to maybe some of the other EMS units in the area? Are they...
Fire department-wise, immediate area, the EMS service that's being provided is basic. That is what we currently have in Garden City. To my knowledge, immediately surrounding Garden City, there's no communities that are anticipating going to the limited advance in the near future that I'm aware of. From meeting with the fire chiefs, I don't see that happening.
So this will put
I
Garden
think that
City.
Garden City is unique in the immediate area, and we're trying to provide a better service to the community.
Okay, let me change gears a little bit here now and talk about the fire safety education that you do this time of year, I guess with the school kids in school.
Yeah, you know, for years it seemed like the fire department in Garden City waited for Fire Prevention Week in October, and we'd go out and visit the schools, bring the kids to the fire station, and it was handled in a one-week type of situation. Well, of course, the kids weren't receiving a great deal of fire safety or prevention in this type of a program. So about a year ago, we started a pilot program where we would go into the classroom in the elementary schools and try to teach fire and fire safety in the classrooms themselves. We received great response from the school administration and the teachers alike on this program that we started. Mike, again, is one that is personally involved in that program. As he stated, he's in charge of our fire prevention. So I know he would like to expand it this year. We've talked about it. It's been one of our goals to expand it into the junior high school.
That was my next question. Right now, it just exists in the elementary school.
That's correct. I know Mike has worked hard on it, and he's probably like to enlighten you a little on it.
Well, we started last year, tried to saturate the schools as much as we could with fire prevention, fire safety, and we started with the elementary schools. We worked with preschoolers up through and included the third graders. And our goal for this year is to complete the schools from the fourth through sixth graders and go on up into the junior high schools, and then at a later date in the years to come, go into the skills labs in the high schools if possible, the shop, home economics, the building trade classes, and et cetera, and hopefully expand it into the business community to the special hazards that we have in the community. People that work in gas stations, the people that we have working in restaurants around Greece and things of this nature, so we can inject some fire safety into their daily lives also.
Are the kids receptive to it? Are they interested to find out about this type of thing?
The kids are very receptive. They're very interested in, the little ones especially, are very interested in the firefighters and the firemen's equipment and the films and the information that we have to pass on to them. I might add that we had a little boy that was had caught on fire earlier this summer, and through one of our safety education classes, he learned the stop, drop, and roll method of putting a fire out, and he applied this to one of the youngsters that had caught on fire that he was playing with. Put the fire out successfully. He successfully got the young man into some cool water, and we feel that his action saved the boy's life, and by putting him in the cool water did stop the tissue damage from going any further.
So it would seem that even if you're just affecting one,
that made the whole
training is
program
worthwhile.
work. That's correct.
Some other things you're doing now with the public home inspection program, something got kicked off this summer.
Yes, we started a home inspection service in the community. We would like to come into the home, point out possible potential fire hazards that there may be in the home, make recommendations to the homeowner for what they can do to correct the situation, and also explain to the homeowner what and why it constitutes a potential hazard. Because for us to just come in and simply say, well, that's a fire hazard, and you should do this and should do that, we'd like to sit down after the inspection and go over our findings and take the time to explain to the homeowner why such and such that we've found is a potential fire hazard in the home. There's no tickets, there's no violations issued, it's strictly voluntary, and we are hopeful that this program is going to meet with success. It's been slow. But there again, we're hoping that by word of mouth from the people that we do get in and inspect and talk to and explain the program, that they in turn are going to talk to their neighbors and try to get this going for us.
It's still a fairly new program.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
How can somebody have that inspection done on their home if they're interested?
We would like to have them call the fire station, and we'll set up an appointment with them that's convenient for the homeowner.
Okay. Another one of those same types of programs where you're going to the public is with the home address plate.
That's
where
correct.
you are, I guess, going through the city, and if you see a home that doesn't have the proper
right.
identification.
We've circulated the city identifying those homes that do not have proper identification. And there's nothing more frustrating to a fireman or a police officer responding to an emergency, and then you know you're in the area, but you can't find the home because there's not a proper number on the house. It causes delays in the response of both police and fire. So what we're making available to the homeowner is a ready-made address sign, and we'll sell it to them at cost. What it costs us, we'll paint the board that it goes on, place the numbers. We have I believe five models that they can choose from. They're not expensive, and I might add, the people have really responded. We have corrected a lot of problems, that one area in Garden City.
Even just as I would assume, just as a safety procedure.
Certainly. Well, we send them out. We send a letter explaining why it's important, and we also tack on a copy of the city code that says it calls for it too.
And it also calls for numerals as opposed to written out numbers.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. How long have you been doing that particular project?
Geez, Mike, that's been going on for over a year now.
Been over a year now, yes.
And it's been very successful,
yes.
huh? Mm-hmm. With winter coming up now, as we get late into fall, what do you people have to start doing differently now? What do you have to do to still be able to function and still be able to operate in the cold?
Well, right now we're actively winterizing all the fire hydrants in Garden City. This maintenance has to be done every year. We check every fire hydrant in Garden City and pump them out if they have water in them. And then, of course, we have to go back and recheck to see if there's a problem causing the leak to ensure that if we have to use the hydrant during the winter, that it's not going to be frozen, because certainly if water stays in there, that hydrant is going to be useless to the fire department if we don't maintain them.
Is there a problem with maintaining the number of fire hydrants that a town like Garden City has? Is there, it seems to be like it'd be a lot of work for maybe a relatively small fire department.
It's time consuming. It's very time consuming because the men have to go around to each fire hydrant, and each fire hydrant has to have the cap taken off of it. You have to inspect the barrel all the way down to the bottom, like Chief was saying, make sure that there's no water in it. If there is water in it, remove it. So the time is a big element there. And especially now that we have a lot going, we've got men going to school for our EMT specialist course, and it is time consuming.
Realistically, how long does it normally take you to cover the entire town and do that?
Completely, so that we're satisfied we got the job done, probably 6 weeks.
At least.
That's a long time if you think about it.
6 weeks. This is being done by men, of course, on duty, on emergency calls. They would respond from wherever they are. If they received a radio call for an emergency, they'd have to drop what they were doing and respond to the emergency.
Sure.
But yes, it's probably at least 6 weeks by the time you make the initial check and pump them out, go back and recheck, pump them out if they are leaking. And then, of course, there's always a possibility that we can't stop the leak. And then we have to call our DPS, and they'll come out, remove the hydrant, replace it with a good one, and then they'll rebuild or service the one that is leaking for us.
Okay.
So we appreciate the cooperation we get through other departments in the city.
Okay. Something that people are probably interested in that doesn't happen too often in a town, especially in Garden City's size, is a new fire engine.
Right.
And I understand you've got your order in on one for next February.
Yes, we do. The deputy chief and myself put in a lot of time writing the specs up on this engine. We feel that we've put together a piece of equipment that's going to service Garden City for quite a number of years in the future. That engine, we hope to take delivery on it maybe in February or March. It's $125,000 worth of money. I think the community is going to be proud of this piece of equipment.
Other than being new, is it a better engine? Is it more functional?
Yes, the way the specs were written, the pump is going to have greater capacity as far as water flow. Hand lines are going to be increased a certain amount size-wise. We're eliminating some smaller lines, increasing the size in some lines. The supply lines are going to be larger to accommodate the larger engine itself.
And it's going to be yellow instead of red.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not so sure that I like that, but that's true.
It's, I guess, a sign of the times.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you both for being with me. Time goes by quick.
Sure does. And this is our pleasure.
I'm glad to have you with me. Anybody who is interested in having anything on Omni Edition in the near future, getting some information passed along, please feel free to get a hold of us here at McLean Hunter, care of Omni Edition Garden City, here in Garden City, and we'll see what we can do to get that on. So for Chief Nims and for Captain Frost, this is Dan York saying so long. Hope to see you next week.
Hi, and welcome to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York.
And I'm Julie Hughes. This week on Omni Edition Garden City, we're going to take a look at the artwork done on the walls of the Farmington Elementary School, and then join Dan for an interview with Leonard Poger, editor of the Garden City Observer.
That's tonight on Omni Edition Garden City. Longtime Garden City resident Helen Minder will face a preliminary hearing on Monday, January 9th in District Court here in Garden City on the charge of selling liquor without a license from her Dash Discount party store next to Kmart. On November 21st, Minder was allegedly witnessed selling to a minor after her licenses had been put in escrow by the LCC. Both her SDD and SDM licenses were put were put in escrow by the LCC on November 10th. Minder has received 13 violations for selling to minors since 1981. Minder or her husband owned Minder's Drugs on the corner of Middlebell and Ford Road up until 1981. She then opened Dash Discount after selling the drugstore to Tony Andrews. The preliminary exam is to decide if there is enough evidence for a case in circuit court in Detroit. Now, Minder was also found to have had video machines on her premises recently with either expired licenses or no licenses at all. While Minder does not supply the machines, she is responsible to make sure they are licensed by the city. Julie?
While many of us were enjoying our holiday weekend, Garden City's DPS was busy clearing snow and fixing water mains at all hours and below zero temperatures. Garden City has 100 miles of roads that in most cases the DPS is able to clear within one day. One problem the DPS has run into, though, was that of cars being parked on the side streets when plows were due to come down the street. Since 1978, there has been an ordinance that calls for residents to remove their vehicles from the street whenever there is 3 inches of snow or more on the street. Snow emergencies can also be declared during other adverse weather conditions that require plows to come down the streets. Police are able to ticket cars that are on the streets during snow emergencies. Since Garden City has a lot of small blacktop streets, there is not enough room for parked cars and a snowplow to be on the street. Another problem that has arisen is getting emergency vehicles, such as fire engines, down the street with snow and parked cars. Dan?
According to Garden City Police Chief Chuck Wilmoth, since the addition of 30 extra patrol cars to high alcohol-related accident areas in Wayne County, there have been an additional 45 drunk driving arrests every weekend. But the most encouraging aspect, Wilmoth said, is that there appears to be a decline in the number of fatal accidents caused by drunk drivers. Wilmoth is the director of a countywide project involving 36 police agencies in an attempt to discourage drunk drivers and make Wayne County roads safer for everyone. The project is funded by the Traffic Safety Association of Michigan. Along with the additional police patrols, posters, books, leaflets, circulars, and bumper stickers are being distributed to help the project's cause. Julie?
At Tuesday's council meeting, council voted to have the firm called Public Administrative Services perform the management audit for the city that is called for by the city charter. Under the charter, this audit must be performed every 5 years. A joint committee of administrative staff, 2 city council members, and an employee representative were involved in a process to evaluate proposals of the firms interested in doing the audit for the city. The fixed cost for the audit is $15,000. The audit will offer a broad view of organizational and operational procedures for city management. The firm will offer recommendations for improvement in making the most of resources, and cost effectiveness for the firm's report is expected in 3 to 4 months. Dan?
According to police officials, Detective Captain John Thomas suffered a heart attack in his Garden City home on New Year's Day. At last word, Thomas was in guarded but good condition at Annapolis Hospital. This is the first time Thomas has suffered from any heart trouble that anyone is aware of. At last Tuesday's council meeting, Mayor Vince Fordell proclaimed the week of January 15th through the 21st as Worldwide Kiwanis Week in Garden City. On January 21st, the Kiwanis Club International will celebrate its 69th anniversary of community and worldwide service. Locally, Kiwanis has existed for 36 years. In other Kiwanis news, the Garden City Kiwanis Club will be donating $1,500 to the Garden City Hospital's Speech Hearing Impaired Improvement Program. According to Dave Chase, project chairman for the Garden City Club, the $1,500 will be used to purchase the necessary equipment for the program. Chase also noted that the project is a 3-way cooperative between the Kiwanis Club, Garden City Hospital, and the Garden City Public Schools. The program will benefit those children with primarily speech impairments in the Garden City schools, Chase stated. Julie?
From the people that brought you the dessert theater comes, yes, Family Pizza Theater. That's right, folks. On January 18th, the Maplewood Community Center will offer a live stage production of the classic Hansel and Gretel as performed by the acting group Crossroads. The program, in cooperation with the Michigan Council of Arts, will start at 7 p.m. with pizza being served at 6. Admission that night is $3. That's January 18th at the Maplewood Community Center. Also being put out by the Parks and Rec Department is a performance of the Herbinger Dance Company at O'Leary Auditorium. Admission for that performance is $5. Tickets for both shows are available at the Maplewood Community Center. Dan?
This Monday in sports, the last of all the winter sports gets underway as the girls' volleyball team at Garden City High School opens up its season. Second-year coach Tom Teeters told Omni Edition what he has for 1984 and what he expects his Lady Cougars to accomplish.
We have a lot of returning girls. We have 4 seniors and a couple of juniors coming back. We have most of our returning team. We only lost 1 starter last year. Our first course, we open up the first day back after vacation with Dearborn High School away at Dearborn. And I'm looking for a lot more depth on the team this year. We don't have any one standout, but I think we'll be a little stronger and go like that.
Who are some of the girls that you're looking to, maybe seniors, to help you out this year?
Well, just as of today, we just lost a senior, Kim Tiskowitz, to a broken rib. She might be able to help us later on the season, depending upon how she heals. Linda Crump and Chris Neslin are returning captains and our captains this year. I think they'll help us out as seniors. We have Tracy Burkhart. She's a good left-handed hitter, and her strength is in her passing. But I think there's two juniors that are probably going to help us out quite a bit, and that would be Katrina Wallace and Sue Cyrus. And if they get in shape and play to their potential, I think they'll be a factor.
How do you hope to do in the league? Are some of the other schools as experienced as you, or do you hope to do well in the league this year?
Well, North Farmington will still be the toughest school to beat. And I suspect John Glenn will improve. I believe they were on the bottom last year. And Thurston still has a lot of returning girls, and we split with Thurston. So we're looking to improve our interleague win-loss record. And I'm hoping we get in the top 3 this year at least.
In boys basketball action, the Cougars return to action next Friday when they take on league rival John Glenn at Glenn. Gone from last year's team are Paul Grisoulis, Greg Gill, Jack Walker, and Todd Jennings. In their place are the likes of Mike Bedarian, Mario Grisoulis, and Jeff Hawley. Last year's Glenn Garden City game was decided on the final shot in one of the most dramatic games you'll ever see.
33 at the line. This is Todd Jennings. 1-and-1 situation. 2 seconds showing on the clock. He's short. Rebound, Garden City. We go into overtime. He hit it. He hit it. I can't believe it. Fred Emery. Full court shot. He backed it. I cannot believe it. Incredible. I have to see this. I think it's going to count. I think it's going to count. Unbelievable. I think it's going to count.
And that'll wrap up the news section of our program for Omni Edition Garden City. Next, join us for a look at the artwork at the Farmington Elementary Schools, and then join Dan for an interview with Leonard Poger of The Observer.
Give kids something to be proud of, and they'll respect it. And the kids at Farmington Elementary School definitely have something to be proud of. As you can see, a lot of work went into the walls at Farmington Elementary School. 5 years ago, a group of parents, teachers, and students gave an entire summer to make Farmington Elementary School a better place to go to school. Everything from nursery rhymes to Disney appears on the walls at Farmington, really adding to the atmosphere of an education. First grade teacher Ann Tobias was the contributing factor to putting the project together. She, along with Mrs. Carol Menor, Mrs. Fran Reinbold, Mrs. Elaine Rickards, Liz Menor, Nancy Loy, Mrs. Janet Loy, Mrs. Ruth Daw, Mrs. Martha Moss, and Miss Lillian Irwin helped make the project possible. The bright, colorful artwork is just as it was 5 years ago when it was originally painted. Farmington Elementary School is another example of how people in Garden City pull together to make it a better place to live.
Attention, the Detroit Zoo will open in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, please. Just 5 minutes.
My lines! My lines! I can't remember my lines.
My makeup! My makeup!
Wardrobe! I say wardrobe!
How do I look? Seriously, how do I look?
Hey, honey, give me a little kiss before I go on, huh? Okay, guys, this way.
Wrong way, guys.
Nice going, Melvin. My lines! My lines!
Ba 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 boo.
I want to talk to my agent.
Let me talk to your agent.
Take it from me. You just gotta keep cool.
Positions, everyone.
Hey, no shoving.
Wait for me. Hey, this place is a zoo.
Visit the Detroit Zoo and see how the stars live.
1 and 2 and...
Hi, and welcome back to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York. With me on the interview section of our program today is Leonard Poger, the editor of the Garden City Observer. Nice to have you with us today, Len.
Thank you for having me here.
Media, I guess. The news is the news, or the people that make the news are the news sometimes, and in this case it will be. How long have you been with the Garden City Observer?
I've been with the Observer as a company for 17 and a half years, of which 10 and a half years I've been specifically covering Garden City on a full-time basis. I should mention, too, I resent the term media, since there's about 2,000 daily newspapers, several thousand weekly newspapers, at least that many TV stations, about 8 to 10,000 radio stations. So I'm not, plus the trade journals, magazines, and so forth. And I'm not sure when they say the media who they're talking about. You know.
Okay, but as a whole, what do you rather? Journalism, would that be more of a?
I think well within the print,
appropriate term?
well within the print media or newspapers per se, there's a number of divisions too. Suburban journalism is frankly quite different than working for a metropolitan newspaper. And there are different responsibilities, different focus, different relationships with other institutions, and the people in the community. And we redefine community. For instance, a TV person on channels 2, 4, or 7 talk about the market. They work for the 5th or 6th largest market in the country. Well, to them, that 7-county region is their community. For the Observer, specifically the Garden City Observer, the town of 35,500 people is our community. And what Coma Young or President Reagan what they do doesn't always directly impact on what Garden City people are doing.
Other than the difference in the size and the area, how different is your responsibility as an editor of a Suburban than to the editor of the press or the editor of the news? How does that vary?
I perceive a major difference. First of all, in a big town, the editor of a paper like the News of the Free Press is usually more distant from a lot of the people he covers. For instance, Joe Stroud of the Free Press doesn't regularly cover Detroit City Hall or the state legislature, the U.S. Senate, but he writes about all those topics. He can sit up in his little ivory tower on Lafayette Street, downtown Detroit, write about those things. If he writes something negative about Coma Young, he never gets, if he does get a nasty call from Coma Young, it'll be a phone call or something, and that's it. But the one who really takes the heat is the Free Press reporter, who regularly covers City Hall on a daily basis. And in my case, with the Observer, as with all suburban newspapers, the editor is just much closer to the heat. In a positive way and a negative way, too.
Do you prefer it that way?
Yep, you bet. It's the only way to do things.
that people know, the readers know, and the news sources know who's accountable and who's responsible. If, for instance, a daily newspaper reporter will cover a city council meeting and write a story about, for instance, a budget controversy or a cable TV controversy, write an objective straight down the line story, a day later there'd be an editorial written by somebody else criticizing what the city council did. And so the mayor says, the next day or so, Joe Blow, you did a terrible job. He says, I didn't write the editorial, I just wrote the story.
Right.
So to the news sources in the community, the lines of authority and responsibility are sometimes blurred. They don't know who's in charge or who's doing what. With the Observer, they know for sure who's doing what, and they know me. My name is in, my home number's in the book. They know how to get a hold of me, and they know who's in charge.
With the Garden City Observer, for example, you are the editor, but who do you, is Maury Walker with you as far as would be your only staff?
Yes, he's a part-time 20-hour-a-week reporter. He covers feature stories and some of the, other things that have to be done in a newspaper office. And I cover city council meetings regularly. I cover school board meetings regularly. I cover elections regularly. I cover the major institutions like the Chamber of Commerce and the Garden City Hospital, McLean Hunter Cable TV, and other organizations.
Before you came to the Observer, where did you work?
Worked for 3 years for a group of small weeklies in South Oakland County, and I was a one-man staff there, took all the pictures, wrote all the stories, and made up all the pages. And before that, I spent nearly 5 years with a small weekly in Utica, Macomb County, doing essentially the same thing, too, as a one-man staff.
When the Garden City, or when the Observer first came to Garden City, now we had discussed this before, where they were the new kid on the block.
Yes, there were two other newspapers, both weeklies, well-established, and obviously more respected at the time, since they were known quantities. And now those two papers have been long since gone, and the Observer is the only established
Was Associated, did they own one of the papers?
Yes, they owned the Garden City Guardian Review,
okay,
which is then the leading weekly in town at that time.
Was there a competition, say
bet.
comparable to the News and the Free Press?
No. Well,
I mean, they have their competition.
You bet, sure. You bet there was, and that's not all bad.
Yeah, do you think it made for better journalism or better efforts?
It's hard to tell. It was a long time ago. The Guardian Review, ended its weekly publication when the Daily Eagle started on a Monday through Friday basis in the midsummer 1970. So we're talking about ancient history, but I think it made for better journalism. We were more enterprising in our stories. We always try to be accurate anyway. And we, in a competitive atmosphere, we try to be more accurate because if we made an error, an obvious error, the competition would correct it or make sure. Yeah. So, there was a self-controlling or self-policing atmosphere there.
Okay. Say at this point in time where you don't have legitimate competition, is there the risk of complacency? Is there the risk of kind of laying back?
Yes. We try to avoid that, obviously. We try to be, in any case, with or without competition, the informational agent for the community. Just like Kmart or Hudson's wants to be the purchasing agent for the community. And we try to get as much as we can in print to serve the informational needs of the people that we serve, either individually, through military or college announcements, or through organizations publicizing skate sales or car washes, high school homecoming events, etc.
What have you seen to be, and this may be too vague a question, but as the biggest change or development or evolution over the past 17 years, 10 years in Garden City?
There's been a number of shifts up and down, positive shifts and negative shifts. I made some notes in preparing for our conversation today, and I remember it was literally my first month on the job. It was May of '66, and about a week or so after I started, there was a big parade on a Saturday afternoon sponsored by the Youth Athletic Association. It was their opening of the baseball season. They had thousands of kids marching down Ford and Middle Belt up to the high school, then there was East High School athletic field, now Garden City High School. And they had a marching band, they had kids all in uniform, they had the parents obviously, and there was a Patrolman of the Year award made as part of that ceremony. About that same time, since it was the middle of May, there was the Michigan Week activities, which included not a contest, an event called Mrs. Garden City Beautiful, where kids in the local schools would write a theme of 2 or 3 sentences, and why her why their mother should be picked Mrs. Garden City Beautiful.
Okay.
And as part of the general cleanup and aesthetic campaign to improve the visual appearance of the city. There's a lot of nice things happening that week. The mother got a crown. She had free lunches all week, and we posed the pictures with a great big push broom from the City Hall janitor. And it was just a nice, when we think there was the Roaring 20s sidewalk sales in mid-August, again involving a big parade down Fort and Middle Belt, a lot of floats. It was sort of like the Sandland Parade, only in nicer weather. And I remember taking pictures of that Saturday morning parade with literally thousands of people lining the sidewalks. And there's the Keystone Cops, there's the tables, retail tables on the street, on the sidewalks.
Are we establishing that there was kind of a different spirit?
You bet there was. There was a sense of community. There was a sense of a tight-knit group of people, presumably all looking forward toward the same thing, having improving their quality of life, and having a good time at it too. Things are, people work 40 or 50 hours a week, and they want to do some other things when they're not working.
What do you think has changed that focus? Is it because there's less emphasis on small towns now? I mean, almost through the television media, and the print media, people's focus is they can find out what's going on in Garden City, but it's a lot easier for them to flip on the tube and see what's going on down in Detroit or something like that. Is that taking the focus away from the small towns?
I don't think so. Again, it goes back and forth. The growth of TV news or network news has nationalized a number of our values. It's easy to put a camera and a reporter in front of the White House and say President Ford or Nixon or Reagan said this or that, and it affects obviously everybody more or less in the same degree. But we're also local citizens too. We pay our local property taxes for our schools, our city government, and our public services. And people generally relate more to their community organizations than to a regional or national group. And that's where I think the community newspaper plays a terribly important role. And I said in my some notes I prepared that we have a suburban newspaper in the community, with or without competition, has a real special role and responsibility, and sort of the informational godfather, because who else can they go to? If the high school cheerleaders want to get a car wash publicized, who do they go to? They can put it on cable TV announcement board, but they also have to come to the newspaper because nobody can they can't take a TV show and clip it out and put it on their calendar. And
then where has that spirit been lost? Where has
in Garden City, it started in the early 70s, and there was a change in the public leadership. And not commenting on whether it was bad or good, there was a change. There was a change in City Hall. There was a change in the school board office. The teacher strike in 1974-75 created a problem. The strike, I think, was a result of that change in leadership, not the cause of it. Again, and that's in that early and mid-70s, including up to the late 70s, actually, that sort of a malaise, just a negative self-image or an inferiority complex was fairly evident. People didn't feel good about themselves, they didn't feel good about their community, and they didn't tell anybody where they lived. I don't want to oversimplify it, but that was a general attitude. Now people are more proud of where they live, and they tell their neighbors and friends that, or not neighbors, their relatives and co-workers that they live in Garden City. We have the first Kmart in the world. We have a good school system. And don't let out Kmart. They changed the shopping habits of 200 million.
Is it a cycle? I mean, is it just coming back now to more community pride again?
It depends. Well, there's an old axiom in government that we're a nation of laws, not of men. I don't believe that entirely. We're a nation of people. The local leaders set the tone and set the direction, and that forces things to happen. If you don't have effective leadership in our public and private institutions, like the Chamber of Commerce, the school board, City Hall, YAA, McLean Hunter, certainly the Observer. If you don't have that responsible leadership, you're not going to have a responsible, effective, changing community. In the early 70s, that leadership wasn't there for whatever reason. Now the leadership has changed. We got when a new mayor and city manager came on the scene in late 79, early 1980. Had a new school superintendent, Michael Washburn, in mid-79. He was replaced again by Mike Wilmot just this past summer. A good example is the Chamber of Commerce with Mitch Nemore as president. Chamber has had, like the community itself, has had a number of ups and downs. And Mr. Nemore, who I've known when he first came to the hospital in 1969, long before he was involved with the Chamber, helped provide that leadership. get things done in a positive way.
Okay, in 60 seconds or less, where do you see the direction going? Where do you see Garden City headed?
It will continue to improve and progress as long as there's effective leadership in the public and private organizations and institutions. If the leadership changes, for instance, an example I used was on a federal level, there's civil rights laws on the books. But if you appointed an admitted racist as the head of the Civil Rights Division, the laws are obviously not going to get enforced.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate having you. This went by quick. Appreciate having you here.
Well, appreciate the invitation.
That'll wrap up this edition of Omni Edition. I want to make sure I remind everybody, if you have anything you want in this program, if you have anything you'd like to see, we want to make sure that we're part of the community. Please drop us a line, 29141 Pardo, here in Garden City. Address it to the Omni Edition of Karen McLean Hunter. So for Len Poger, the editor of the Garden City Observer, I am Dan York. Have a good evening.
Hi, and welcome to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Julie Hughes.
And I'm Dan York. This week on Omni Edition, we're going to take a look at an edited feature we ran about 2 months ago on the Garden City JCs in recognition of JC Week, which starts this weekend. And then we'll have an interview that I did with Sal Granillo, the general manager here at McLean Hunter Cable Television.
That's tonight on Omni Edition Garden City.
Garden City experienced its first fatality of 1984 Tuesday afternoon when a 75-year-old woman was hit by a van on Ford Road in front of the National Bank of Detroit, east of Middlebelt. She was rushed to Garden City Hospital where she died at about 1:30 that afternoon. Catherine Jones Gale was attempting to cross the road during the snowstorm and had her face covered to shield herself from the wind. Apparently, the woman was also hard of hearing. This was the second time in 2 years someone has been hit jaywalking in Garden City. The police department is expressing concern over the jaywalking problem here in town, especially in front of the Lepresian Theater and Garden City High School. Police have been cracking down at the high school on students for jaywalking across Middlebelt to the restaurants across the street. Police are very fearful that one or a number of high school students could be killed if a car can't stop in time in the snow. In an incident last fall, a student was caught throwing rocks at a police car that was watching for jaywalkers during the school day. Julie?
No sooner had Garden City's high school 1,600 students returned to classes Monday from Christmas vacation when they were sent home again. The problem being a water main supplying water to the school's lavatories, kitchen facilities, and boiler room had broken during the early morning hours, and the city had to turn off the water to the building before they could begin repairs. School officials say the boiler could have kept the building warm all day, but the county will not allow schools to be in session without working lavatories. The following day, Tuesday, another main broke, but it wasn't serious and school was kept in session. The break on Tuesday was one of 5 main breaks in Garden City, all on the same day. Firefighters Union will begin to present the membership with a revised contract this Thursday after the membership turned down the city's offer for the second time last week. The hang-up seems to be a clause that will give firefighters a responsibility of performing certificates of occupancy inspections. According to Union President Kenny Hines, the rest of the contract seems to be agreeable to the membership. The last contract was voted down 8-7, with 8 firefighters not voting. Dan?
Detective Captain John Thomas of the Garden City Police Department is now seeing visitors after he suffered a heart attack at his home on New Year's Day. Thomas is said to be recovering well in Annapolis Hospital. A preliminary investigation by City Administration of real estate sales for the first 9 months of 1983 show that local assessments could drop by nearly 6% this year. That's if sales from September through December of 1983 continue at the same rate as those previous in 1983. Another thing that will have to occur for residents to feel the benefit of the lower assessment is for the millage rates of the city, school board, Schoolcraft College, and the county of Wayne to stay the same. A typical homeowner will see a tax decrease of about $84 if everything does stay the same. The city, though, stands to lose about $56,000 if they leave the current millage rate at 17. Last summer, when the assessment value also dropped, City Council increased the millage from 16.23 to 17. Residents, though, still saw a decrease in their total tax bill. The school district's income will not be affected by the decrease in the assessments because the difference will be made up by the state government. The county will officially act on this year's assessment in the very near future. Julie?
City Council was presented Tuesday with a community relations policy that includes input from a number of city employees that participated in a course on effective communicational skills. The policy covers community education, press relations, employee education, cable television, and resident concerns. Specifically, the policy calls for regular distribution of newsletters, brochures, letters, and annual reports to newspapers, radio stations, television, residents, and businesses, periodic resident surveys, regular press releases by the city administration, keeping all employees clearly informed on programs, policies, and services, also encouraging employees and residents to develop cable television skills. The council plans to review the policy before taking any action on it. Classes that are now forming at Maplewood Community Center for the month of January include beginning photography for children, Korean karate, youth art classes, boxing, dance, and baton lessons. Registration for these classes can be taken care of at the Maplewood Community Center, which is located on Maplewood, just west of Merriman. Coming up in February, Maplewood will hold a swap Saturday. Yes, 50 cents will admit you into a swap room on the 4th of February, in which you can swap anything you can bring in. Skis, boots, skates, appliances, games, coats, and more. That's February 4th from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Dan?
Benefit basketball returns under the dome Thursday, January 19th, when the Garden City Junior High Booster Club and the faculty tip off against the TV2 Eyewitness News All-Stars. Proceeds from that game will go to the Junior High Booster Club. Expected to be there: Pat Crosby, Stu Clyde, Tenick, Mark Barrich, Verge Jacks, Ronnie Clemmer, Fred McLeod, and Bill Flynn. Tickets are $1, and they're available at A&W, S&R Office Supply, Stadium Sports, the Maplewood Community Center, Printing World, and the Cambridge Center. Julie?
Garden City's volleyball team got off to a rough start Monday, dropping their opener to Dearborn 2-0. The Cougars lost their first game 15-7 and the second game 15-11. Laura Surma led the way for Garden City with 6 straight service points and 8 total points in that game. Dearborn last season was ranked number 5 in the state. The final rankings: Garden City opens their league season tonight on the road against Redford Union Panthers. Game time is 6:30. And in JV action, the Cougars also dropped their opener 15-6, 15-4. Dan?
Garden City's wrestling and basketball teams will return to league action this week against the Rockets of John Glenn. Both games will be at Glenn. In wrestling, the Cougars will take a 7-4 mark against the defending league champions. Glenn has won the league now for 16 straight years. Over the holiday, Garden City's wrestling team lost to defending state champion Catholic Central. And to number 5, Wayne Memorial. In 2 tournaments, the Cougars picked up 3 gold medals and 4 bronze medals. In basketball, Garden City and Glen will put their undefeated records on the line. Both are 2-0, along with Thurston, who is 2-0 in the Northwest Suburban League. Wrestling is Thursday night, and basketball tips off Friday night. Garden City skater Jerry Campbell will be competing in the United States Figure Skating Championships to be held in Salt Lake City, January 17th through the 21st. She's 13 years old. She placed first at the novice level in the Regional Figure Skating Championships held in Cleveland. She also received first place honors at the novice level and the Figure Skating Championships held in Minneapolis by defeating skaters from 22 other states to win the gold medal. Julie?
This weekend marks the start of National JC Week in Garden City. Tonight on Omni Edition, in recognition of that fact, we're going to show you a feature on Garden City JCs that ran about 2 months ago. Also tonight on Omni Edition, Dan has an interview with Sal Granillo, the general manager of McLean Hunter Cable Television. Before we take a look at that interview, we'd just like to remind you that, again, we're always looking for your input into the program. The idea behind Omni Edition Garden City is to touch base with every aspect of the city, and to do that, we need your help. Within the next few weeks, we're going to make some changes in the show to make it much more appealing to you. We've come up with a new logo, and sometime soon we'll have a new set. A new feature in the very near future is a segment on health that will feature Dr. Warren Schilberg, that noted sports medicine physician who has his office and lives in Garden City. Those are just a few of the things that we hope to be bringing you in the near future. Right now, let's take a look at the Garden City JCs. Oh, and Dad, happy 54th.
The Garden City JCs have a rich and impressive history. The same is true here in Garden City, where the JCs have become an integral part of the community. Officially named the JCs in 1965, the group began its establishment in the early 1900s. In Garden City, the JCs have existed since 1954. The purpose of the JCs is leadership through community involvement. Their dealings with the community have helped the JCs become known as one of the most important groups here in Garden City. One of the most visible projects sponsored by the JCs is Santaland and the Santaland Parade. Every year without fail, the JCs have made sure that Garden City had one of the most successful Christmas parades in the state. They have also kept the Santaland complex open, much to the joy of thousands of area youngsters each year. Hundreds of hours are put into that annual project. Another visible project sponsored by the JCs includes the Junior Miss program. The JCs invest a considerable amount of money into that program, with the majority of it going into scholarships. Other JC projects involve festivals at City Park, the 4th of July fireworks, Cougar and Bulldog of the Week awards, and the JC Haunted House. The JCs have an age restriction of between 18 and 35. The reason behind that limitation is to force change and make sure that all JC members become involved in the leadership process. In that same scheme of thought, the JCs can only hold an office for 2 years, thus guaranteeing the involvement of everyone. The JCs also have an organization for women. The age limits are the same, and the 2 groups often interact on the same projects. The JCs are always looking for ideas and new people. Their meetings are held on the first Thursday of each month at the Silver Lanes Dining Room. The Garden City JCs, a group our town can be proud of.
Introducing the Disney Channel. Premium programming for the whole family, 16 hours a day. You'll watch features from Epcot Center, movies from the Disney Library, and specials for the kids. There are specially created movies, too, like 5 Mile Creek and Tiger Town with Roy Scheider and Justin Henry. And as a Disney Channel subscriber, you will receive the monthly Disney Channel magazine absolutely free. But the best news is you can choose the Disney Channel as part of our new Premier package and save money. With Premier, you'll get Disney, plus over 40 basic services, your choice of any two of our existing premium movie services, like HBO and Showtime, and more. Call us today for more information on the best entertainment deal around.
Hi, and welcome back to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York. With me on the interview portion of our program today is Sal Granello, the general manager here at McLean Hunter for the station, and welcome to Omni Edition.
Thank you, Dan.
A little bit about yourself as far as where you were at McLean Hunter before you came here.
Well, I'm one of those people who seems to always land on his feet, I guess. 4 years ago, I was laid off from the Ford Motor Company, and I heard through the grapevine that McLean Hunter had an opening for a warehouse person. That's how I started. It's funny, but that's how I started. I took that job, and you know, you do a little here and a little there, and eventually it comes back to you. And finally, I guess about 2 years ago, they gave me a chance to build a small system in Monroe County in Bedford Township. I did that, and then Garden City opened up, and luckily, I got this job. I really like it here.
That's neat. That's a kind of a rags to riches or something like that.
Sort
but
of, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. The franchising that went on from McLean Hunter to Land Garden City. Now, in the end, there were, I believe, 3 companies that were heavily looking to get into Garden City, if I remember correctly. I would say Group W, Metro, and yourselves.
Correct.
What does a cable company do? Apparently it's an expensive process as far as franchising out of town and attempting to franchise it, but it's going on all over Wayne County and all over the state and all over the country right now. What did McLean Hunter do that secured them into Garden City instead of Group W or Metro?
Well, I think probably in the final analysis, the council here picked the company that most realistically depicted what they thought could happen in Garden City.
Okay.
I'm sure that all of us went through the research stage, and I'm sure that all of us went through the, you know, the negotiations where they say, where the city wants this and you can give that. But I think the real thing that happened was that, fortunately, this city council realized that pie in the sky never paid off.
Okay.
And I think our proposal was realistic.
How do you start out? Where is the beginning that McLean Hunter decides, well, Garden City would be good for us? It'd be a good town to land.
Well, you look at demographics. You know, you look at the kind of people that live there. You look at the number of people that are in a given area. Obviously, the more homes that you have that you can potentially contact within a given mile, okay, the better for the cable company. Garden City is a community of mostly private homes, but they're on fairly small lots, so the density was there.
A lot of houses in very little space.
Right. The other part of it is that Garden City had the income range that we feel that you know, makes a successful cable market.
And you have done well as far as subscriptions in Garden City, have you not?
Better than we thought, yes. Yes.
Approximately 70%?
Well, a little less than that. We're about somewhere between 65 and 67.
What's normal?
The national average is somewhere around 46, I think.
So, doing well.
We have done well here, yes.
What is, and this may, and there may be no answer to this, but what is the cable company's relationship or responsibility or place in the community, to the community, as I don't want to call it a utility, but as the only one of its kind in the town, so that you are very highly exposed, and most people would say that you have an obligation of some sort to the community.
Well, we do. We feel we do, and I feel that way. We are obviously in a you know, in a what's the word? Privileged position to be able to be the cable company for this community. The city council negotiated a contract with our company. The contract, the franchise agreement, our proposal to the city is our commitment to Garden City. And what makes us, I think, different from most cable companies is simply the fact that we really believe in local programming. We really do. And our commitment to Garden City is to bring this particular medium of communication to all the people of the city.
How, McLean Hunter itself, what is their background in cable television?
Oh, Lord, they're probably, they've had maybe 30 years of experience in cable television. They have 16 systems in Canada. They have 48 municipalities in New Jersey under one system, which has like 160,000 subscribers in New Jersey. We serve 16 communities, including Garden City in Michigan.
Okay.
So if you add everything together, our potential subscribers are nearly 1 million, and our subscribers are a little over 500,000.
Garden City kind of operates as a separate unit as opposed to your Wayne cable system, which encompasses a whole bunch of downriver communities. Is that right?
That's correct. We're each separate profit centers, and each of us has a separate staff and management team. And the goal of that team is to make that particular company the most successful company within the corporation.
Now that is not the subject of debate, or maybe the subject of not a whole lot of understanding of people, that McLean Hunter still is nothing more than a profit-making business.
Absolutely.
And you are here to make money while serving the community.
Well, that's correct. You have to understand that we put a tremendous amount of capital into the community. Mm-hmm. The system itself, building the system itself, costs something like $5 million. The mobile that we have that serves the community is almost $200,000. You know, those things, as a business, we just don't give away. We're looking for a return, a reasonable return.
How long does McLean Hunter have guaranteed in Garden City? Should they live, you know, as long as you live up to your agreements and everything like that?
We have a 15-year commitment from the city.
How does that normally work? I mean, does it happen occasionally that a cable company comes in and gives the town 10 or 15 years and the town isn't pleased, or has nobody ever gotten that far? Is cable television, as far as the franchising of it, that new around here that, you know, nobody's gotten to that point where the city said 15 years later, we don't like it?
Well, the only case I know of is in Upper Michigan. There's a case, I think it's in Marquette, where the commission decided to throw out the original cable company and to bring in a new cable company. But in that situation, I think what happened there is the community just got caught up in, gosh, look at what we missed. You know, when we started franchising, the commitments that companies made to cities didn't have to be really huge. We started out just providing television service to areas that couldn't receive television signals. Okay, so if you give a 15-year commitment back then, okay, and then you turn around and today you say, well, Garden City is getting $500,000. They're getting a $200,000 truck. They're getting a studio. They're getting an access. They're getting a this. They're getting a that. We're not getting anything, you know. So they tried to say to the original franchise grantee that, hey, we didn't get any of that stuff. Now we want this stuff this time. And apparently that company wasn't willing or able to do that.
What would happen if 15 years later Garden City said, we don't want McLean Hunter? Does McLean Hunter rip up their lines? Do they sell them to the next cable company? That would be a rather unique situation.
There are provisions within the franchise agreement and the ordinance that provide for the transfer of the system itself to another company.
Okay.
And we of course would have the responsibility to maintain the service as nearly normal as possible during the transfer period.
Okay, let's go back to local programming for a second. As you said, McLean Hunter prides themselves on local programming.
That's correct.
From what I have been able to see, of the systems in this area, McLean Hunter probably puts on the most local programming of them all. And a situation like Garden City, where even though it's almost brand new, there seems to be a lot of programming coming out of Garden City. And it may be minimal by your standards, or even by the people, you know, the cable commissioner, whoever, but as far as I can see, there's a lot of programming coming out of a system that has been on the air for maybe 6 months.
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that it's a minimal amount of programming. Our own personal goal here, when Sean and I talked over the arrangement, Sean Breeden, our program director, was to try and have 10 hours of new programming a week.
Okay.
That's kind of a hard goal to meet. You're aware now of just how much time it takes to put on 30 minutes. Most people in the city aren't. But as they become involved, I think they'll realize and they'll understand our situation. I got to give thanks, of course, to all those volunteers, the people that really help us here in Garden City. Without those people, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, a lot of people probably aren't aware of the fact that programming even like this, but more than likely your football games, your basketball games, all the programming that comes on Channel 3 at night normally is put on by volunteers. You've got your 3 main people that are employed to put on programming here, but it takes a lot of volunteer work from the community.
Yeah, that's correct. As a matter of fact, if you look at our staff, we have 16 total people here in Garden City. And of the 16, 5 of them are in programming. Now that includes all the business office people, that includes me, and that includes all my service and technical people. So a third of our staff is set aside for programming.
Right. How, the issue that came up recently now that we are into this taping session in December.
You talking about the rabbit?
The Playboy, yes. The dreaded rabbit. The Playboy channel. Did you, as a station manager, have the ability to say to McLean Hunter Toronto or McLean Hunter wherever, I don't want this channel, or was that even a consideration ever?
I guess you have to honestly say that if the corporate people wanted it here, it would be here. But the way the McLean Hunter system works, they take into consideration what that manager, what that general manager happens to think. I mean, he's actually the guy that's on the scene, and he knows what's going on. If I felt that that Playboy wouldn't have made it here, I don't think it would have happened. But the other part of that is, our real position on the Playboy channel itself is it's a constitutional right. We're talking First Amendment. And I'm one of those guys who used to be called a liberal, but whom I now call constitutional conservatives. Those are the people who support the Constitution.
Okay. Numbers, raw numbers, but approximates for the week before Christmas. What are the stats as far as people taking the channel?
We've had probably 1,300 upgrades or subscriptions during this campaign.
Improving on the new channels that have been added.
That's correct. Probably 1,300. Of those 1,300, Playboy is in at least 950 of those combinations. And if you look at Playboy side by side with the Disney Channel, you're probably talking Playboy 2-to-1. And although some of that's going to, I think some of that wide margin will dissipate once the newness of the channel wears off, I still think you'll see more Playboy subscribers than you will Disney subscribers.
And in a roundabout way, the city itself is going to make money off of the Playboy channel, and this is not taking a shot, but in a roundabout way, that money, because the city of Garden City receives, I believe, 5%.
That's correct.
From McLean Hunter of your gross or net?
Of our gross revenues.
Okay, and 3 or 2.5% of that goes to the Cable Commission.
2% goes to the Cable Commission.
And one of the things they do is
the
this
other
program.
3% goes to the city. That's correct.
Okay.
So yeah, you're correct. When you say that.
I don't think that's anybody's consideration, but in a roundabout way, that's how it worked out.
Well, when you think about it, it was a corporate decision. We made a business decision. We really didn't consult the city and say, may we, although we did talk to the city.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you being here. Went by quick.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Folks, if you have anything you'd like to see on this program, please do drop us a line. We are looking for input from the community because we want to make it more of a community-oriented show. Drop me a line at 29141 Pardo. That is the address here at McLean Hunter, and address it to Omni Edition in care of McLean Hunter. So for Sal Gonella, the station manager of McLean Hunter, again, thanks for being here. I am Dan York. Have a good evening.